Om Aginatimurandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshmatamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapatam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Didanti Swam Benantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yatapatakamam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sakana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Jajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Vedam Sakana Lalita Shri Vishavitam Cha. Everyone, Hey Krishna Karana Sundar Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopikanta Radhakanta Namostate Tapta Kanchan Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sudade Pranamani Hari Vanchakalpatrabhyascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachadini Nirvishesha Sanyavada Praskachade Satanani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare. So in the Vedic scriptures there is the word pramana, and pramana means evidence. Before one speaks, or one has to have evidence. So there's three main types of evidence. And the first one is called Shabda, Pramana, Shabda. And this means spiritual sound. So this means the Vedic scriptures. And the Vedic scriptures can be summarized in the Bhagavad Gita. And then after Bhagavad Gita, we have the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, Shabda Pramana. Our evidence is Sastra. So that's the highest type of evidence. Like in a court, you have the prosecutor and then the defending lawyer, and they give different evidences. So our main evidence on what we say is coming from Sastra. Then the second one is Pratyakshaka. Rajividya Rajagam Avitamidam Utam Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha means direct perception. It means what you see. So this is not such good evidence, because you see the moon. I think the moon is coming to be, it's growing. But you don't understand it's so far away. Or you see the sun, and Prabhupada said it's 14,000 times bigger than the earth, something like that. So direct perception is not so good, but it's a type of praman or evidence. For example, another example, you go to the beach and you look at the ocean. So what do you see? A few waves. But underneath in the water, there's millions and millions of fish. And lately the sardines have been coming. So these sardine shoals, 10 or 12 or 14 kilometers long, stretching. So billions of little fish. But you're looking at the sea, you don't see that. The whales, the sharks. So direct perception is not as good as from Sastra. It may be, I'll give you another example, late at night, and you see on the ground, you think it's a snake, but actually it's a piece of rope or a branch. So your senses can trick you. What you see, what you smell, what you taste. It's not always the truth. There is a saying, seeing is believing. But it's not true, because you can be tricked. So direct perception, it's a type of evidence that is not as good as Sastra. Sastra means scripture. And the third one is Anuman. And Anuman means logic. A logical explanation. And I'll give you another example. That you go to the forest and you cut down a tree and it falls and it makes a noise. But how do we know? If we're not there and a tree falls down, how do we know it made a noise? Because we weren't there. But you just apply logic. Previously, when a tree fell down, it made a noise. So then you're using now logic that in the future, trees that fall down will make a noise, but it may not be true. So these three types, Shabda, spiritual sound, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedas. And the second one, direct perception. And the third one, logic. So we emphasize Shabda. Therefore, when the whole world claimed that they went to the moon, 1969, they went to the moon. Prabhupada said they didn't. And this is based on Sastra, scripture. Prabhupada at that time was in London, and he was staying at John Lennon's estate, and it was called Tittenhurst Manor. It was like 100 acres. And previously it belonged to the Cadbury family. You know that chocolate? Cadbury's, fruit and nut. I like it, but can't take it now. Problem down there. So, Prabhupada was staying there, and John Lennon was also staying there with Yoko Ono, and he had various people, and Prabhupada's disciples were staying with him. And he had one disciple who was serving him, and his name was Purushottama. And Purushottama was very excited about landing on the moon. And he believed it. He accepted it. But Prabhupada was dubious or a little sarcastic about, and said actually they didn't land on the moon, etc. So Purushottama Prabhu had a problem with this. It was, his guru was saying one thing, but he was attached to this idea that, yes, NASA, the North American Space Association, we've done it. We've landed on the moon, we've beaten the Russians, and we left our flag there. So Prabhupada would make fun and joke. I think this is from Prabhupada Lilamrita. So with Prabhupada in Chaitanya Manor was Jamuna, our god sister, who passed away, but extremely advanced, really nice Vaishnav. And she was cooking, and somehow or other she got a little distracted. And there was, I think it was the ghee or the oil was burning, and there was a type of explosion. If you have ghee or oil and it's very hot, and you put a few drops of water in it, it sort of explodes or something. So there was some type of explosion. Everyone was very startled. And Purushottama and Jamuna, they got covered in a type of blackish or grayish smog or something, dust. And they came running to Prabhupada. And according to Prabhupada Lilamrita, Prabhupada said something like, "Oh, everyone's gone to the moon." So Purushottama got a little disturbed, and he decided to resign. And he couldn't handle it. Sometimes when you associate with Vrindavan or the deities like Jagannath or the Guru, you can become over-familiar. And then there is that saying, familiarity breeds contempt. So it seems like Purushottama had a conflict of faith, and he left. He performed, he told Prabhupada, and then he left. And then Prabhupada remarked about the moon mission. And he said, I can understand Purushottama doubting what I say. But how can he doubt what Scripture says? In other words, Shabda. Because Scripture is absolute. So this is how Prabhupada responded. So of course Purushottama made great spiritual advancement. So Shabda, Sastra. But Sastra also has to be presented in context. And then there's different types of Sastra. Part of the Vedas, Sama Veda, Rig Veda, Yajna Veda, Atharva Veda. Sama Veda would mean knowledge. Describes Sama, of music, different rugs, raginis, dancing, theatrical plays, which are based on Ram Lila, Krishna Lila. Part of the Vedas is the Ayurveda, which deals with medicine. Ayurveda, instead of dealing with the symptoms, it deals with the cause. For instance, You have a boil. Let's say you have a big boil on your nose. So, allopathic medicine or Western would cut the boil, or they call it lancing the boil, squeezing out the poison or whatever, and then give you an antibiotic, which usually would work. But Ayurveda, it does that also, but Ayurveda will ask the question, why the boil came. So the boil came because of some blood problem, etc. So it's deeper, Ayurveda medicine, it's more subtle. But you may not get an immediate result. And in the Kali Yuga, we very much want the immediate result, isn't it? You have a sickness, you want to take a pill, and the next day be all right. But it doesn't always work like that. So Ayurveda is definitely more subtle. But one problem is we have Kali Yuga bodies. Our bodies are a little strange. So the bottom line is there's different types of medicine. Ayurveda, allopathic, homeopath, natural, acupuncture. So whatever works, you should take. It's practical. So if allopathic, morphine and codeine and paracetamol, if that works and actually helps you, then you should take that. So the Vedas also deals with architecture, but it would be about temples. So we see in the different cities, the most beautiful architectural buildings are the churches. Like in Paris, it's called Notre Dame, and then Westminster Abbey in London. These are buildings to glorify God. But now we have these buildings which are very impersonal, glass, stainless steel, and not very holistic. So that's because we're living in the Kali Yuga. So architecture, military warfare. So it explains, you have the enemy. So the first thing you do is diplomacy. You try to come to a compromise, peaceful solution. And when that doesn't work, you flatter the enemy. You flatter them. Oh, you're so good. You appeal to their false ego. Then you come to the third one, which is quite rampant in South Africa, and it's called bribe. Do we all know what is the bribe? Right? You get stopped for speeding, the bribe. It's very powerful. And it goes on all over the world, the bribe. And the fourth one, Prabhupada had this phrase, stickum bunkum. In other words, stick. In other words, you have to resort to some violence. So, the Vedas, Shabda Brahma, we accept, but it must be understood in context. Then I explained direct perception, so that's not very reliable. But nevertheless, it's a type of evidence. And then the third one is logic. Like, you can say logically the sun in 1 year's time will rise at this particular time, because you've seen in the past. It's just called logic. So these are different methods of knowledge. So we rely on the first one mostly. Yeah, Shabda Brahma. So also, there are very nice examples to describe devotional service to Krishna. So one example, because by examples we can understand better. You see, the Vedanta Sutra, first we have the Vedas, and then the conclusion is Vedanta Sutra. And sutra means a phrase that has the most meaning in the least number of words. Like atato brahma jignasya. Now, immediately inquire about spiritual life. Sutra. But it's philosophical. And we are not used to philosophy. What happens when someone speaks philosophy? We usually fall asleep, isn't it? We start looking at other people. Oh, she's wearing a nice sari. Oh, he's got a nice hairstyle. So Bhagavad Gita, which is the supreme philosophy, Raja Vidya, is presented in the form of a story. So this battle takes place. But in the middle of the battle, Lord Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita, which is philosophical. So, examples are very important. So we'll give an example, how the living entity is naturally attracted to God. And one example, one of my godbrothers was walking in Vrindavan and happened to see a cow, and the cow was giving birth to a calf. So he had never seen like the actual emergence of a calf. So the calf came out of the cow, and I think they're sort of blind almost when they're first born, and immediately the calf was able to stand, and it went to the udder of the cow and started sucking the milk. Now, no one taught the calf what to do. Like driving lessons, we're taught. It just spontaneously did that. So you can ask, how did the calf know? How did the calf know not to suck on the cow's ear, or perhaps tail, or hoof? How did it know the udder? So this is the super soul. This is proof that within the calf, it's being directed by God, by the super soul. So the calf is sucking the milk, and the mother cow is licking the calf. You've seen this, how cows will lick. Sometimes you feed them and they lick your hand. I think they like the salt, from the sweat or something or other, but they also lick the calf. So it's spontaneous. So in the same way, we are connected to God, Krishna. So we simply have to understand that. Like the cow and the calf. So that calf taking the milk, No one, as I said, no one directed the mouth. It just naturally went. We can see this also when birds migrate. Sometimes they come from the northern hemisphere and they fly to the southern hemisphere, South Africa or Zambia. And sometimes they go to the very tree, every year to the same tree. But they don't have like a built-in navigational, like we have in the car, that navigational thing, You will now turn right in 100 meters. Now turn left. And you can have it in an American accent or English accent or, So the birds, they don't have that. But they naturally know where to go. How is this? We call it superintelligence. This is the supersoul. It's guiding the supersoul. So within the heart is the supersoul, God, Paramatma. We are Atma, but there is also the Paramatma, the Supreme Soul, guiding us, inspiring us. This inspiration comes from the supersoul. An artist like Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci, they're inspired and they paint like Leonardo da Vinci. It's interesting. He appeared in Italy and he was born in 1452. And he was a complete genius, Leonardo da Vinci. He left in 1519, and that's when Lord Chaitanya was present. So according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Ancha Lila, chapter 3, he actually went back to the spiritual world, because every living entity that was living at the time of Lord Chaitanya's presence was liberated. Tum Vaikuntha Paitava. There's 4 references at least in that Ancha-lila. All living entities. Stava, which means stationary, which means trees and shrubs and grass and cactus. And Stava Jangami, moving. Cows, human beings, we move. Sava Jiva Jati, they all went back. Tumi Vaikuntha Paitava. Lord Chaitanya took them all. So that would include Leonardo da Vinci. So that time, they call it the Renaissance. And it's called the Enlightened Era. And he was a brilliant philosopher and painter. He only painted about 16 or 17 paintings. And the last painting he ever painted was called Salvator Mundi, Salvator Mundi. It was a picture of Jesus Christ, sort of like this. It's only about this big. And Salvador Mundi. And 2 years ago, it was auctioned for $450 million. Someone in Phoenix bought it. No, it was the Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi Arabia. And they do have a little bit of paisa. So he bought it for $450 million. And now he's building a special gallery just for the painting. Because these paintings, you have to keep them in a place where the humidity is controlled and air conditioning. It's ridiculous, So, Jagannath Subhadra Balaram. So that's one example. The cow and the calf. and how the Supersoul is directing, and the affection between the cow and the calf compared to the affection between God and us, God and his children, the living beings. And it goes both ways. It's not a one-way street where we just serve Krishna, but Krishna also takes care of us, special care. Jiva Goswami gives the example that a king is responsible for all the citizens, but he doesn't personally do it. He has his deputies. And that would be like the demigods. But the king is also responsible for his wife and children, but he deals with them personally. He doesn't have his ministers take care of his wife or children. He gets personally involved. So when you become a member of Krishna's family, when you recognize him as the Supreme Father, Aham Vijabhat Pita, the Supreme Pita, Father, he deals with you personally. And he takes away all your karma. So whatever happens to a devotee, it's not your karma. It's Krishna doing it, planning it, simply to purify you. So, now we'll give you another example. That devotional service must be uninterrupted and concentrated and focused. There's the word sandratma. So sandratma means condensed. If you put if you have a bucket of water or even sand, you can put your hand into it. But if it's rock or cement, you can't, because cement or rock is condensed. So our devotional service to Jagannath, to Krishna, to Nrsimhadev, to Ram, has to be condensed. And there's an example that I take this piece of paper and I put it under a magnifying glass, and then I catch the rays of the sun. So the sun's rays go through the magnifying glass and onto the paper, and then I focus it. And then after 30 seconds, it starts smoking, and then after 1 minute, flames. So it doesn't happen straight away. You take the magnifying glass, it doesn't happen 1 second later. It has to be focused. If it's not focused, it doesn't work. So devotional service, it has to be concentrated, focused on one's Istadev, worship or Lord. So in a general way, it's for Krishna and all his incarnations. Like we just had Nrsimhadev's. So we're thinking of Nrsimhadev. And shortly will be Balaram's appearance, and then Krishna's appearance, and then Gaur-Purnim. So general. But as you become more advanced, you may be attracted towards a specific incarnation, Krishna or Ramchandra. But that's when you become more advanced, so it's concentrated. So it's like the light coming and hitting. So that's how we would explain or give the example how our devotional service, chanting the name of God, worship of deity, cooking for the Lord, it's got to be more focused and concentrated. Because you can easily be doing deity worship, but thinking of something else. Am I correct? There was a devotee in America, and he was doing Pujari service, worshipping Radha and Krishna. And he used to put on earphones and play, the earphone and so he was playing songs. So they asked him, out of curiosity, what are you playing when you do the deity worship, dressing the deity? And he said, oh, Madonna. Why Madonna? And he said, because it enlivens me. Madonna. So you can be doing deity worship and chanting Hare Krishna, but thinking about Madonna, what are they? Taylor Swift. And now they call it the Swifties. I can't understand how she has so many followers. Anyhow, very popular, extremely popular. You can be thinking about cricket. You're chanting Krishna's name, you're doing deity worship, or you're cooking for the Lord. You can be thinking about the Olympics, which are about to start, the elections. So our devotional service has got to be more concentrated. And that example of the sun and the magnifying glass. Then another nice example, that the holy name is non-different from Krishna. But when we chant the holy name, we're not seeing Krishna, we're not witnessing Vrindavan or Lord Chaitanya dancing, but we're chanting. So the holy name is hiding itself. Is not revealing itself fully. And the example is that you meet someone and you look at them, but they don't reveal who they really are. So you don't actually know who they are. You're standing in front of them, one lady or one man, but you actually don't know who they are. But when you get to know them later, that person could become your friend or your wife or your husband. But on the first meeting or the first few meetings, you don't actually know who the person is. So we're chanting the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, and we're getting tremendous benefit. But the holy name is not revealing itself fully. And when you chant purely, it's called Shuddhanam. Shuddhanam is the pure name. Then the holy name will reveal your spiritual identity, who you are in the spiritual world, perhaps a cowherd boy, or Mother Yasoda following in her footsteps, or a resident of Vaikuntha, like Prahlad, or Jai and Vijay. So the holy name will reveal Nam, Rup, Guna, and Leela. Nam, the Rup, the form of the Lord, and also your own transcendental form. Nam, Rup, Guna, your qualities. Nam, Rup, Guna, and Leela, pastimes of Krishna. So Shuddhanam is very high. There's 3 types. Actually, there's 2 types. There's Shuddhanam, the pure name, and then you put the word Shuddhanam in front. That becomes the impure name. You might ask, well, how can the name of God be impure? So it's your conception that's impure. It's not the name. The name is pure, but you're not able to realize it. The sun shines down on a place where someone has passed urine and stool, and it purifies that place. right? But the sun does not get contaminated. Would you agree? You can't contaminate the sun, but its rays can purify. So the holy name is like the sun, but our conception is a little twisted or colored. So there's Shuddhanam, the pure name, and then the impure name. And then the impure name is also of two types, Namaparad and Namabas. This is all from Jaivedhamma by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So Namaparad means offenses. It means big offenses. It means on purpose offenses, like premeditated murder. It's big time, Namaparad. And then Namabas means clearing stage. It means I don't want to commit the offenses. I'm trying to avoid them, but due to past habits, sometimes I slip into that, but I'm trying not to. So that's Namabas, clearing stage. And then gradually Namabas, by mercy, will come to Shuddhanam, the pure name. So these three stages. So we must continue in our devotional service. There's different types of angas. Anga means limbs. So there's 64 different types. For example, circumambulating the deity, accepting flower garlands that have been offered, dancing in front of the deity, reciting prayers, observing festivals like Radhastami and Krishnastami. So there's 64 that have been given in Hari Bhakti Vilas and also written in Nectar of Devotion. But of all those 64, there are 5 which are most important. So what are those 5? Nam Sankirtan, Sadhu Sangha, Bhagavat Shravanam, Mathurabasi, Srimataye. The first one, chanting the name of God, Nam Sankirtan. Just chant the name of God. And then Sadhu Sangha, associate with devotees in a favorable way. And the third one, hear Bhagavad Gita, Shrimad Bhagavatam, hear what is called Bhakti Sastra, scriptures which deal with devotion. And the fourth one, Mathurabasi, visit or live in holy places. Vrindavan Dham, Navadvip Dham, and Jagannath Puri Dham, Prabhupada said, are identical. So you try to live there. And if you can't live there physically, how do you live there? In your mind. So, in order to think of Vrindavan or Navadvip, you first have to go there. Even if it's only for a few days or a week. Otherwise, it's all theoretical. You read. Nice example. When Prabhupada was younger, he went to school at Scottish Church College. So it's in Calcutta. And I also went to look at that place. So the British controlled India, and their idea was if they could convert the intelligentsia, the intelligent people, the less intelligent people will follow. So they emphasized a lot teaching to the more cultured. So Scottish Church College was more high class, like in where I live in Hillcrest. I think it's called Kearsley. And I drove past it the other, very expensive private school. So Scottish Church College. So the teachers, the British were so good at exploiting and managing that they had to learn the language. Can you imagine that? They had to learn the language. So these professors and teachers, they knew Bengali or what the language. And Prabhupada almost like was being indoctrinated. This is what they used to do. How anything from England is superior. London, Sheffield. And anything from India is not very good. And one time a professor, he said, we don't believe in the law of karma, because if someone is sinful and they do something bad, who's watching? Like, who's watching it? So Prabhupada, obviously, Abhay Charan, he knew the answer, the super soul. But because out of etiquette, he couldn't challenge the teacher, the professor. It wasn't proper. But Prabhupada immediately. So Prabhupada wasn't in any way contaminated or influenced by this so-called propaganda. They paid Prabhupada on a morning walk, he said, they paid a bribed Indian gentleman to write a book on all the good things that the British have done in India, like build bridges, and so people now can go on parikrama, and how they stopped the sati rights. But Prabhupada said they just bribed this man. So when Prabhupada was there, he heard how London was almost like the streets were made out of gold, and how the River Thames, this is the river that flows through London, it's called the River Thames, is so beautiful, dignified. So this is what Prabhupada heard. So when he actually went to London and he saw the River Thames, he said, this is like a small-time canal. There's nothing. It's all false propaganda. It's all false propaganda. So Prabhupada was a little surprised at the whole thing. But with propaganda, you can convince anyone. Isn't it propaganda? Prabhupada also said the communists, they never personally went to Bengal, but they sent their books. So in West Bengal, communism, it's fading a little now, but it was previously popular, communism. The Naxalites. So by propaganda, you can spread. And there's a nice story. Prabhupada relates this story that there were a group of men and they decided to play a trick on their friend. And they said, all right, whenever we meet this friend, Mohan, we'll call him Mohan, we'll say he's possessed by a ghost. So Mohan is going about his business and one of his friends comes, looks at him and goes, ghost, ghost. Putishwara, Buddha, ghost. And Mohan, he laughs. What are you, this is ridiculous, go away, you're just playing a trick. So then another friend comes, and as soon as he sees Mohan, he says, "Ghost! Ghost!" So now Mohan is thinking, oh. Anyhow, he's still not convinced. And then a third friend comes and says, "Ghost!" So then Mohan is thinking, oh, I've become a ghost. So this is called propaganda. They went to the moon. We're hearing it again and again and again. So if you hear something many times, then eventually you become to believe it. There's a nyaya. Nyaya means logic. That you have when they make fences, there's that wooden stick fence. Then you hit it again and again and again and again, and gradually it goes into the ground. So when you repeat something or hear something again and again and again, it's a type of logic. You begin to believe it. So if you hear something which is good, like Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is God, practically on every page, Krishna is God, then that's perfect. But when you hear some false propaganda, the world is flat, false propaganda, conspiracy theories, then you begin to be affected by it, and you might even believe it. Some people, the conspiracy theory that AIDS was started by some CIA or some group, and it was to reduce the population. Conspiracy theories. So we're not really interested in these things. We take our proof from Shastra. So we have to learn or read Shastra a little, and then we quote it. Like a lawyer will quote, he will say, well, 10 years ago in this particular so-and-so versus so-and-so, this was decided. And then the judge, they all say yes. So our proof, pramana, is coming from Shastra. Ishopanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. So we have to read it, and we have to try to understand it. And if you don't understand it, it's because you don't have the ability. But you carry on reading, and then gradually the penny will drop, and you will understand it. But to begin with, you may not. Because we are conditioned souls, and we're like the frogs. And the frog living in the small well, and then his friend comes to him and says, oh, Indian Ocean. And the frog says, well, maybe it's twice as big as my well. 3 times, but not more than 4 times. But you can't compare a well into the Indian Ocean. So we're like frogs, and we're croaking away in the dark. I hear this all the time in my garden, the frogs croaking. So I researched, and they're croaking to attract the female croaker, the female frog. And they croak in different rhythms and sounds. And then the female frog knows that that's a certain frog, and that's another frog, and that's a different species of frog. So we're like frogs, croaking away, and as we croak, the snake of time, Kalasapa, the snake of time, is attracted, hears us, and swallows us. Is it not time? the time factor, sneaks up, and it sneaks up. Before you know it, the wrinkles, the hair falling out, the pains, difficult to even get out of bed. You have to slide out of bed, climbing the steps to the Phoenix Temple. It's tough. Teeth falling out. So you have to take more liquids. You can't hear properly, so you need a hearing aid. And then you need to wear glasses because you can't see properly. Apakshaya, the body is dwindling, the snake of time. So the snake of time is going to attack all of us. But for devotees, we're going back to the Lord's pastimes. But for non-devotees, it's very frightening because they don't have any conception of next life. When I was in hospital, one doctor, he told me, or pharmacist, that some people, they're afraid to go to sleep because they're afraid they won't wake up. So they don't have any conception of a Supreme Personality, the law of karma. They think there's one life, is that it, that's it. And they're afraid even to go to sleep because they're afraid they won't wake up. So we're not so concerned about the death because we understand that we're going to wake up in the Lord's pastimes. It could be Krishna's pastimes. It could be Lord Ram's pastimes. It could be Lord Nrsimhadev Vaikuntha. It could be in Dwarka. It's according to our eternal relationship with God or Krishna. So we're not in anxiety. Death will come, but we're not so much bothered. Today, tomorrow. What's the big deal? But materialists or non-devotees, they're in great anxiety and very frightened. So we can only pray and hope that Krishna consciousness can continue to spread all over the world as it is doing. So thank you very much. I shall pray that you can all take shelter of Jagannath, Subhadra, Balaram, Lakshmi, Nrsimhadev, through chanting the Lord's holy name. That we can go from Nama Parad to Nama Bas to Shuddhanam, the pure name. The name can deliver us. The holy name of the Lord is everything. It's the ultimate goal. And of all the different types of service to the Lord, chanting his name is foremost and the most powerful. It's the most powerful and the number one. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Parampara ki jai, Rupa Raghunath ki jai, Jagannath Subhadra Balaram ki jai, Go Premanandi. So please make a comment or ask some question. When I only went to America once. I prefer to go the other way to India. But I was staying in Gita Nagari, where His Holiness Satsarup Maharaj wrote most of the Prabhupada Lilamrita. And I remember one evening, at night, there was this very loud sound. and it sounded like a cow. I thought it was a calf mooing. Very, very loud. And then I asked, and they told me it's bullfrogs, and massive frogs. And sometimes, I remember there were some farmers, and they go out at night hunting the bullfrogs. I think they eat them. I don't know. Something or other. So you get the small frogs, and the medium frogs, and the phoenix frogs, and you get the big frogs. So we'd like to ask anything. Yes.
I was looking at the internet and trying to find. I was looking at the internet and trying to find pictures of Srila Prabhupada's family before he took sannyas. But you can only find without children. Only one son is Sulachan, and the others are not to be found anywhere. Am I mistaken?
Hari Sori Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's personal servant for over 16 months, he wrote in more depth. So Prabhupada had 5 children, but it seems he may have had some others, but miscarriage. Hari Sori Prabhu said. So the first one, Prayag. And believe it or not, Prayag Rag became mentally unstable and died when he was around about 30. But he came mentally disturbed, ended up living in the streets. Very strange. Anyhow, the second was a daughter, I think Sulakshmi. So I think she married, and the third one was? Now the third one, this is the one that went with Prabhupada and met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Radhakund. Oh, the name will come in a minute. But he was very intelligent, and he touched the feet of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And what was his name? Third one. Anyhow, in the end, as fate would arrange, he took ISKCON to court in India on the logic that he's a bona fide son, and he was the only living son at that time, elder, and the property of the father should come to the son. So Prabhupada owned, or everything in ISKCON was in Prabhupada's name. Therefore he should inherit ISKCON India and all the properties. So actually there was a court case that went on for a number of years. And in the end, as far as I remember, he accepted a bribe. Because everyone accepts bribes, and retired. And the court case was dropped. So that was the third one. I think he's passed away. The fourth one was a daughter who I understand never married. And the fifth one was Vrindavan Chandra. So this fifth one, when Prabhupada took Vanaprast and lived in Vrindavan, he would come and serve his father. Vrindavan Chandra was the youngest. And I met Vrindavan Chandra in the lift in ISKCON, Mumbai. We were in the lift together, and he looked just like Prabhupada. And then I asked him the obvious question, your remembrances of Prabhupada. And he said, Prabhupada, my father, he was always chanting or reading or doing puja. And then he said he was very strict. So we know this. Prabhupada was actually strict with his disciples. Yeah. So Vrindavan Chandra. Do we have the name of the third one? Huh? Mathura Mohan. Yeah. So these are the biological sons, and obviously they're very blessed. But none of them took so seriously. So Harisori Prabhu makes the point that if they had become more serious, they may have taken some spiritual position and then influenced Prabhupada's disciples and other generations. Yeah. And then Prabhupada's wife eventually took initiation from a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Yeah, she took initiation. And then one of the daughters of Prabhupada's daughter also had daughters and children. And they were in Mayapur. And I think it was two of them, and somehow or other they drowned in the Ganges. I think it was Vrindavan Chandra's family members. Anyhow, Prabhupada said, I had 5 children, but now I have thousands. So we see ourselves like that. Prabhupada, our father, our grandfather. Any other questions, points?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for the class. I really loved it when you talk about Sri Prabhupada's pastimes. I think it's really pertinent for us to all hear. And this is just a comment. I was thinking that, you were saying that the British took over India and they enforced English in all of the schools. It seemed like a bad thing at that time, but if you think about it, later on it became one of Srila Prabhupada's greatest assets because he was able to follow his spiritual master's instructions, which was to spread Krishna consciousness to the West. So that made me realize that if we think that we're going through something bad right now, it might be bad now, but it could turn out to be our greatest asset in the future. That's what I wanted to say.
A very nice point. Yeah. The most auspicious planet in this universe, Brahmanda, is the Earth planet. And the most important place on the Earth planet is India. And in the whole of India, it's Bengal. And in the whole of Bengal, it's Navadvip. And Lord Chaitanya, only 500 years ago, which if we consider cosmic time, it's not even 1/10 of a second. We're coming so close to Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. 500 years. It's like a lightning flash. It's just, consider that Lord Brahma, He's a living entity. He lives for 311 trillion years. And don't forget, 40 billion years. Can you imagine a trillion? It's way beyond us, a trillion. And he lives for 311 of them. And his life is compared in the Bhagavad Gita to a flash of lightning and bubbles in the Atlantic Ocean. You see the bubble, and then it's gone. The lightning, it's so quick, flash. So we're very fortunate to take birth, and we can assist Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya in preaching in South Africa, in Durban. Extremely fortunate. Anything else you'd like to add? Yeah. Swabhagya. Swabhagya means great good fortune.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your class. Maharaj, you spoke about devotional service in your class. It was really concentrated, uninterrupted, and consistent. And even last week in your class, you spoke about the love and devotion given to Srila Prabhupada in South Africa. So my question is, over the many years of your observance, what would you say are some of the impediments for devotional service not to be consistent and for you to be interrupted?
What's it?
And perhaps what advice can be given to overcome these impediments?
Advice on what?
Overcome impediments.
Overcoming. Impediments. There'll always be obstacles. Always. But the flow of bhakti must always be there. So therefore enthusiasm. Utsaham nishtayat dayat. We can't move an inch without enthusiasm. Why? You came on a Tuesday night. You have some enthusiasm. Rath Yatra, enthusiasm. Food for life, you need some enthusiasm. It's all voluntary, is it not? We're not paying. It's voluntary. So there has to be this enthusiasm, and it's called utsaham. And Rupa Goswami, how important is enthusiasm. So the obstacles will be there. Just like a river. So you may throw a few stones or there's a log. So it's a bit of an obstacle, but if an elephant falls down in the river, it blocks the whole river. Obstacles will be there, but if the current of the river is strong, it'll wash away the elephant. It'll wash away the obstacles. So the obstacles are this body, health, attachment to family members, unstable mind, because that's the nature of the Kali Yuga, so many mental problems. So these, you can't stop the obstacles. But if you have some enthusiasm, then it will wash away. So this has to be there, utsahan. Got to be a little, and what's the opposite of enthusiasm? Lethargy, lazy, can't get out of bed, can't do all my rounds, can't be bothered to go to the temple. Lethargy, lazy. What is it? A potato couch. Potato couch. I'll just lie down in front of the couch and eat my potato chips, Simba. It reminds me of Lord Nishingadev. And you eat your salt and vinegar chips and you watch Bollywood movie. So there's got to be some enthusiasm. So we pray for this enthusiasm. Let it come. Thank you. So we'll end now. Jagannath Subhadra Balaram. Srila Prabhupada, Guru Parambara, Gaur Premanandi. Thank you. And we'll just have short kirtan. Thank you.
Partha Sarathi Das Goswami Maharaj ki.